Hi, I'm Elliot Wright, and I want to talk to you a little bit about something I'm doing with Sibelius 7 right now. I've been working on it for a while, and it's not quite finished, but it's a system that I've been working on between Sibelius 7 and East-West Quantum Leap Symphonic Orchestra to try and get the two of them to work together as seamlessly as I can. Now, in this video, I don't really want to get into too much of the technical stuff about exactly how I did it. I can talk to you about that later. But I do want to do a little bit of a sound sampling of what it sounds like and approximately how it operates. Now, if you take a look here, I've got this score, and I've got my woodwinds, my brass, I've got my strings, and it looks all pretty normal. There are no excess markings. There's nothing that stands out as being odd about it. But here's what happens when I go to my layout and I turn off Focus on Staves. Kaboom! I've got a whole bunch of extra staves that were hidden. Now I'm going to go to Panorama to help it get cleaned up a little bit, and you'll see that everything is organized almost like a big sequencer, which is kind of the idea. I eventually figured out when I was working with Sibelius and trying to figure out how to get a better sound out of my scores, the object being to be able to create a realistic looking score, like a professional looking score, and get as realistic a playback as possible. I realized that when I work on playback, I can use Sibelius as a sort of sequencer program that just happens to have a score instead of a piano roll. From there, what I've done is I've taken the idea of using a manual sound set. So just so everyone knows, it's a manual sound set. It's not a sound set file, and I'm using this to load a key switching patch into each instrument, and then I am routing a hidden instrument underneath each of those instruments into the same MIDI channel. That key switching instrument below it will play notes that are either well above or well below the actual instrument's range, and those activate what are called key switches in the sampler. I'm going to try to keep that at the maximum of what I'll talk about in this video. I just want to go through a couple of examples here. In this example here, I'm going to talk about what I did with this flute here. The first thing that I did when I was trying this out was I loaded the patches I needed for a flute, and I tried just switching between two articulations. One is staccato, one is legato. So here's my flute patch without any special key switch articulations. It's just legato. Okay, it has probably a better sound than some samplers right off the bat, but it's lacking a certain energy to it. The line sounds a little bit boring. And in some scores, especially older scores, you'll notice sometimes there aren't as many articulations or as specific directions as we would expect in a modern day score, where we give every single piece of instruction that we can. So you sometimes have to tell the computer how to play each note without actually putting a marking in there. So here's what I've done here. I've used this key switcher here to activate the regular legato key switch using this Q note in order to hit that key switch before the first note plays. And then I've used notes just placed wherever I need them in a utilitarian sort of manner to switch back and forth between staccato and legato. So I've done one 2-bar passage which switches between legato and staccato, then another one which plays it without the staccato key switch. Then I activate a key switch to turn on the trill patch, and another one at the end of that bar there to turn off the trill patch. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to take this trilling note, I'm going to slur it to the next note so that Sibelius will see the slur and it will interpret it as meaning play this note 100% of its length until the next note is played. Now, of course, that's not a correct notation. I don't want that showing up in my score, so I'll hit Control-Shift-H and hide it. So now the playing effect that I want is going to be put into effect, and the score will remain unaffected in terms of its visual representation. Let's take a look here, switching just between legato and staccato on the flute. Here's another example where I've done that with a passage of Tchaikovsky's Apotheosis. I've got this bassoon line here, which sounds like this with no articulations. Great. Now that's actually how it's notated in the score, or at least the version of the score that I've got. So I've taken the liberty of putting in the little staccato markings that I wanted in order to make these notes sound a little more short, give it a little bit more energy, make it sound like a human is playing it. Alright, so that sounds a little more human, although I should change this last staccato to a legato. There we go. Now, here's something that a regular sound set file cannot do for you. In this part here, the same or a similar passage is played, but now in triple forte, and it's played with a little more power behind it. Now, the first version that we just heard there uses double forte, and I've used the key switcher to access the main legato or the main sustain patch. Now in this passage here, it's much louder, it's playing with the entire orchestra at its back, and I want it to be a little more powerful. So I'm using this key switcher here to activate the non-vibrato patch, which I decided while I was auditioning the sounds, I decided works better for loud passages. So now instead of switching between the regular sustain and staccato, it's alternating between the non-vibrato and staccato to give you a more powerful sound. Just a little bit more powerful. It's a very subtle difference, but it makes all the difference in the world when you compare that to the much softer sustain sound that we had with the other key switch. That's the advantage to using these key switchers and using this manual sound set. Here I've got the trumpets and the horns, as well as the tuba underneath them, way down here. They also don't have any special markings on them, but goodness knows that these notes here, the eighth notes, would have been played, or if you listen to a recording of it, they usually are played, a little shorter, but not quite staccato. That's why you'll notice that underneath them, the key switching staves that govern how these staves up here are played, they don't have any key switches on them. What I've done instead is I've selected the eighth notes there, and I've used the inspector here to change the live duration to a shorter number, in this case 90, where the original length was something like 100 or 120. And that gives it this effect where the note is shorter, but it is not a staccato. Now I'm going to play this passage here with the trumpets, the horns, and the tuba playing all together, and then the trumpets and horns drop out, and I'll play all the way to the end of this tuba passage, where later on I start using the key switches again on the tuba to make the articulation difference between staccato and sustain in this final passage here. So we'll show you how that sounds. Okay, that wasn't too bad. But I've noticed that these last two notes here felt a little bit soft. I'm going to take this key switcher, and instead of playing the regular sustain, I'm going to move it up to the note that I know will access the non-vibrato, which is a little bit stronger sounding. Okay? So I'll try that again. There we go. Those notes sound much stronger now. Now I'm going to take a look over at the strings now in the same passage from Apotheosis. Over here you'll notice there aren't very many key switching notes either, because what you can do with this system that I'm doing, you can use key switching notes and or you can use text, just like you normally do with Sibelius, to change sound IDs in Sibelius sound world. In this case, I've told Sibelius to use staccato, the word staccato, which I've changed in the Playback dictionary to not only mean to shorten the note, but also to change the sound ID to staccato. And for all of these instruments here, I have loaded a marcato up-down patch. And what that means is that the patch has been loaded with an up bow and a down bow for every single note, and it switches between up bows and down bows on every other note. So you get this feeling that sounds like the section is actually playing up bows, down bows alternately, rather than the sort of same note over and over again. So here's what it sounds like with these double bowings. Okay. Now that is admittedly in its upper range, which makes it a little harder to hear the difference between the bows. But what I'll do is I'll move to this section here and I'll play the entire orchestra all together in that section. One last thing I forgot to mention. I'm the only person I know of who's doing this right now, but I'm pretty sure there's got to be somebody out there who's doing something similar. So if there is something that you noticed that really caught your attention, anything that you think I may have overlooked, by all means, just drop a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, get some ideas from you. And otherwise, just I would really appreciate it if you just click the like button. It lets me know that you enjoyed it. And I look forward to posting a few more videos in the future as I get this system going a little better and as I make it a little more operational.